Okay, good morning. So today we're going to embark on Learning Unit 6, which is titled More About Objects. And as I said earlier on, objects is the O in OOP, okay, object-oriented programming, of which Java is an example of object-oriented programming. As its name suggests, it's crucial, okay? It's the whole idea of inheritance and everything hinges on this whole idea of objects. And we did a little bit of this before in Learning Unit 1, when we set out. We were messing around with Gr10 and the Gr10 class, and we were messing around with objects there. But we're going to have a little bit more of a sort of a formal look at what these objects are and what they do now. So here at the beginning, I'm on page 103 in the book. So they're talking here about declaring and instantiating an object. Okay, those are two different things, although we usually do it in one line. Just for shorthand, you can do it in two. Okay, so obviously declaration is an important thing. We know that Java is what they call a strongly typed language. That means you have to declare any variables before you can use them. Okay, so and obviously objects are a type of a variable. We actually store them as a variable. They're not a primitive variable like an integer, but there's a lot more to them, but they are treated almost as a variable. We give it a name. Okay, so if we think back about how we did this, okay, I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, can you see my screen there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll see here in my line 15 where it says Gr10 bug1 equals new Gr10. Okay, that's there. This left-hand side of the equal sign, the Gr10 and the bug1. Okay, that is the declaration part. I'm declaring a new variable called bug1. And it is of type Gr10. Okay, it's a Gr10 object. It's a Gr10. It's going to be instantiated using the Gr10 class. And we know by now that the purpose of a class is to create an object. That's the purpose of a class. And then new Gr10, we are taking this bug1 and we are instantiating it. We get the new operator and we run the Gr10 constructor. I'll cover that a little bit later in this lesson. And the new Gr10 gets created and it gets assigned to that bug1 variable. So we could, like I said, we could have done this in two lines. I could have done it like this. Okay, that's perfectly legal. I could have first of all declared it. And then in the second line, I could have instantiated it. So given it a value or create a new instance. That's what they talk about in object-oriented code. You create an instance of a class. An instance of a class is an object. Okay, so you could do it like that, or you could do it like this now in line 18 in just one line. Either way, it doesn't matter. Okay, so we now know how to create an object. We use the new operator. Okay, it's a keyword new. And there's no parameters passed. There's nothing in the brackets. Okay, so it's not passing any parameters in. And you can see there, they show you on page 103, they're showing you Gr10 bug equals new Gr10, and you can see the first Gr10, that's the class to which the object belongs. Bug is the name of the variable. You could have called it anything. Equals, new is the operator to create the new object. And then Gr10 is it's the constructor method. It's the boss method in that particular class. And it's that will actually construct the Gr10 for you, hence its name, constructor. Okay, And you can see there, I've just shown you, I've just demonstrated, they show you there in the book how you can do it in 2 lines or how you can do it in 1 line. And when we construct this chocha, you can see there's a whole bunch of stuff there because I passed nothing in the brackets. Okay, the brackets were empty. When the constructor runs, it's going to create a set of default values. Okay, and those default values, you can see them there. It's going to put it at an X position of 7 on the screen and a Y position of 5. Okay, so that kind of puts it more or less in the middle of the screen. It sets its direction to up or 1. The integer 1 is the direction up. It sets the color to red. It sets the width of the trail to 5 pixels. It turns on the show trail, okay, which is a Boolean value, whether it's going to show the trail or not when it moves. And it sets the label to blank, no, nothing. So the string is empty, to the empty string. And if we turn back in the book, if you go back to page 10, you can see they sort of describe different methods that are in the chocha class. So you can keep an eye on that. But I will show you where you can get all the information about it. I'll show you that shortly. Okay, so those are fields. Those are fields or properties of the chocha object, are those there. So because we didn't set them, they get set to those default values for us. Okay, so now we're starting to dig into the nuts and bolts of this here. I'm on the next page now, page 104. 6.2, what happens in memory when a chocha object is instantiated? So what happens if we, let's say, for instance, if we create an integer, okay, we create a variable that's of type integer. So what happens is a piece of memory gets set aside, it gets given a name, just a piece of RAM, and the integer value gets saved into that block of memory. Now, when we create a chocha, it's slightly different because it's an object. One piece of memory is not enough to hold all the information about it. It's not a primitive data type. It's a bunch of things. Remember, an object comprises of properties or fields and methods. Okay, and they are encapsulated with the object. So what happens is, once again, a piece of memory gets assigned. It gets given the name bug or whatever you called it, okay, the variable name. And inside that piece of memory is actually the address of a larger block of memory somewhere else in RAM that holds all the information about the object, all its properties, etc. So it stores a reference to its properties, which is held elsewhere in memory, okay? So when it's initially created, it's just created as null or nothing. There's nothing, no pointer in there at all. But as soon as you say new chocha, boom, you get a new address, a memory address, a pointer, they call it, that points to another block of RAM that holds all the information for you. So that's what's happening in memory if we dig really into the nuts and bolts. Okay, so now I'm on 6.3, okay, a program with more than one chocha object. Now, obviously, if we've got the chocha class, we can make as many chochas as we want. We can make 1, we can make 100. It doesn't matter. We can make as many as we want. That's the idea with a class, is we can use that one piece of code to generate unlimited chochas for us. And as we create each chocha, it will get its own set of properties, okay? That's this whole idea with inheritance. So each time you create a chocha, a piece of RAM gets set aside with the name, whatever its name is, bug 1 or bug 2 or bug 3. Its memory will point to another block of RAM that's got all the properties in it, okay? So each chocha has its own set of properties, its completely own set. And this is the thing with object-oriented coding. Each object does not know about the other. it's a completely self-contained block of memory. And as far as it's concerned, it's the only Gr10 on the block. It doesn't know about the others at all. Each one is created independently. It'll have its own X value, its own Y value, its own color, its own direction it's facing, etc., etc. So it's got its own set of fields. And that's the great thing about object-oriented coding, and that's how we make games. Okay, we're just going to put a whole lot of objects on, and we're going to mess with their properties. So we can, so they are completely independent of each other. That's what we're trying to say here. So each time you run the new operator, a completely independent Gr10 gets created with its own set of properties and its own set of methods. Okay, so this activity 1, which is the 2 Gr10s, that's actually what you can see on my screen here. I just put this together this morning quickly just so that you can see it. I haven't called mine 2 Gr10s. I've just called it grade 10 LU6 activity 1. But they're saying they declare and instantiate one Gr10 object. So there I've done it. Okay, there in line 15 and 16, I've made one. Then they want you to make another one called bug2. So there in line 18, I've made another one. Okay, so there are 2 completely separate Gr10s. They don't know about each other at all. Then they say make bug1 the color cyan. So there I've said bug1 dot set color. Now cyan is one of the preset colors. I think there's 256 of them. There are these preset colors that have been given a name. I think it's 256. I'm not too sure. We'll go and have a look now. And magenta is another one, and obviously red, green, yellow, blue, white, black, brown, whatever colors you can think of, green, gold, silver, they will have their own colors as well, predefined. Okay, so you can see I've used the set color method. Okay, and if we go and have a look at, if you go and look on page 10, in your book, you'll see set color is one of the methods that Gr10 has got. It allows me to set the color of the Gr10. And inside the set color, it's expecting me to pass it a color object. Okay, color in Java is also treated as an object. Okay, and you'll see now why that is. Okay, and then we've got, they want us to make the Gr10s face in opposite directions. So I used the set direction method of the Gr10 class. So I made one face the left and one face the right. Note here how I've used capital letters for left and right, also for cyan and magenta. These are constants, okay, and I will show you now how we know that. In Java, these are constants. These are fixed names for colors. And left and right, they were defined in the Gr10 class as constants. And in Gr10, when we use a constant, we always write it in all caps. That's how you know you're dealing with a constant in Java. And then they want you to run the program. So let's just run the program. Let me just save that. Let me run it. Can you actually see that running in my screen share?
No, sir, I can't see it.
No, it's okay. So no, I didn't think it would because it sort of popped up in another screen. The Gr10 grid comes up, but it's not inside the screen that I'm sharing. But when you run yours, you will see it there. Okay, so one thing I want to show you, a couple of things I want to show you quickly. Do you remember how to use this import it.star here?
Yes, but not completely.
Okay, so I'll show you what you got to do. So here on the left-hand side, you click on libraries. Okay, so you just expand out libraries. It'll normally look like that. And so you right-click on libraries, and you say add a jar or a folder. And now you'll have this it.jar. You would have downloaded it from the Funworks website at some stage. I suggest you put it on your desktop or somewhere where you can easily get to it. Okay, so you've got this it.jar and it.docs. Okay, so those two things you've downloaded from funworks.co.za. This is the guys who make this textbook. If you go to downloads in Java, you'll find it there, the it.jar and the documents. Just if you haven't already got them, then download them and just save it on your desktop somewhere. So what you do is you just find it and you just say it.jar and you say open. And then what happens is you'll see that it.jar gets put into the library. Okay, so here's the whole of the JDK, the Java Development Kit. You'll see this is all the stuff that comes with Java. And now you've added it.jar. You've put a jar file in there. Okay, so once you've got that, okay, once that is in the library, then what you can do in your code, you can say import it.star. And that will import the whole of, or it'll import all the, it'll import the package, the IT package. So you'll get all the methods for the Gr10 and all the other bits and pieces that come with it. So that there is how you can now just say new Gr10. If that was not there, watch what happens. If I comment that out, immediately look at my code. I'm full of errors here because it doesn't know what Gr10 is. If I have not imported that, it doesn't know what the Gr10 class is. The Gr10 class is here inside the IT, inside this jar file. So once I've imported that, I've got full access to Gr10. Now, because I went color, as soon as I did this, I typed color dot, and as soon as I put a color, immediately NetBeans did another import for me. It imported this java.awt.color. That there is what handles the color class. Okay, so that is not part of Gr10. If I want to mess with colors, I've got to add that ability in. Okay, you'll see if I comment that out, you can see immediately I'm getting errors here where I'm saying use the color class because it doesn't not know how to do it. So that import there now gives it that intelligence. We've imported that code. That's the other thing with Java is these reusable libraries. That's why it's such a powerful language. Okay, so I'm going to show you quickly. Okay, so I'm just going to stop sharing this screen here. And I'm just going to share my, oh, there's Mr. Chetty. Good morning to you. Okay, so I'm going to share my browser, which is here. Okay, that's the wrong one. Let's see. It's on my desktop. Nope, still there. Oh, there, okay. There's my desktop. Right here. Okay, so what I've done is I have in the IT docs, okay, the documentation that comes with it.jar. So when you download it.jar, download IT docs as well. And you will, you can go into it and you'll see there's a whole lot of HTML files in there. Just double click the one called index. And that's going to open up a website for you on your machine. All the documentation comes up as an HTML document. And this is the full documentation for the Gr10 class. You can click on Gr10 over here on the left. You can see there's a whole bunch of classes in the it.jar file. We're not using these. These are all for drawing graphs and all sorts of things. But we are just interested in Gr10. Okay, so we just click on Gr10 and it opens up here. So if I go down here, you can see there's a whole bunch of fields or properties. Okay, you can see there's the color, the direction, up, down, left, and right. There's the label, whether the trail is visible or not, it's Boolean, the width of the trail, and the X and the Y position. Okay, so these are all the properties that a Gr10 has got. Now, if I look down here, okay, you can see I've got, I'll come back to this constructor now. Here is a list of all the methods that a Gr10 has got. Okay, we've got getters and setters. That's what we call them in Java. Getters will allow us to get the value of a property. So we can ask the object, what is the value of a specific property? A setter allows us to change the value of that particular property. So you'll see here, I've got, there's a get direction. So there's a get direction, and then there's a set direction. Okay, so there's the getter for the direction, and there's the setter for the direction. And you can see I can also get the X and the Y position. I can move. I can set the color, set direction, set the grid size. You have to do that first if you want to change the size of the grid. Set your label. There's the set position. So that's the setter. There's the getters for the X and the Y. Set position will set it. Set trail width, set trail on, set trail off, turn left, turn right. So these are the methods that come with a standard Gr10. Now here, okay, we are now starting to talk about constructors. So like I said, a constructor is the boss method of the class. It's got the same as the class name. And you can see here that the Gr10, if I just say new Gr10, then this constructor, this one over here, that's the one will run, and it'll give me default starting values, okay? But let's say, for instance, I want to create my Gr10, and when I create it, I want to tell it what color it must be. Okay, I can always create it as this, and then change its color with the set color method, or I can create it straight off with a color. So I can say new Gr10, and then in brackets, I can say color.magenta, and that will create me a new Gr10 that is then magenta. Or I can say new Gr10, and I can put 2 integers in the brackets. That will then place the Gr10 somewhere else on the screen by default. Or I can run this constructor, the 4th one, and I can give it 2 integers and a color. So, and the first integer will be the X, the second integer will be the Y, and I'm going to say color.green. So it'll put me a green Gr10 at whatever X and Y I put in there. Or I could use the 5th Gr10, and I could say Gr10 bug equals new Gr10, and this time I pass it 3 integers, okay? An integer for the X, an integer for the Y, an integer for the starting direction, and we know that those are 0, 1, 2, or 3 for left, right, up, and down, and then I can pass it a color as well. So instead of it getting default values, like I call here, I can set some of these values when I create it. Now this here, the fact that I've got 5 different constructors, we call that overloading. I've taken one method name, constructed Gr10, and I've got 5 versions of it. And the way that they differ is by whatever I feed in the brackets. So if this Gr10 here takes an X and a Y, I cannot make another constructor that only takes 2 integers. Let's say, for instance, I might want to have given it, I don't know, let's think of something stupid, a Y value and a color integer. So I could not make a 6th Gr10 that's got 2 integers. Once I've used up that option of 2 integers in the bracket, I've used it. Okay, you cannot do it again. That is how overloading works. That what gets passed into the brackets, that must be different. Okay. So in the book here, they're talking about the other constructors, and you can see they will show you there exactly kind of what I've told you. Okay, and then they are saying use the Gr10 documentation. Okay, I'm now sort of halfway down page 105. Use the Gr10 documentation to find out about the other Gr10 constructors. So I've just shown you that. I'm in the Gr10 documentation here, and I've shown you the constructors, the 5 of them. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to show you is, if you go here to this address, okay, so it's docs.oracle.com/java/7/docs/API. Otherwise, you can just go onto Google and type Java API, and the top, pretty much the top link will be this. Okay, this here is, let's say, the user manual. Okay, API stands for Application Programming Interface. It's the Bible of Java. Okay, it's every one of the built-in packages, every one of the built-in classes. So if I want to go down here and I want to see how does, say, the color class work. Okay, so I can go down the left-hand side here, and you can see there are hundreds and hundreds of these things for just about anything you can think of. This is why Java is in such heavy use. There are libraries, standard libraries for everything. Look at them. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds here. Okay, so I'm going to go and look for color. So I'm going to go up here. It's alphabetical. I'm in the F's, E, D, C coming up. Okay, C-O-L, color. There it is, color. So when I click on color, on the right-hand side, it's now going to tell me how this color works. Okay, so I can see here, if I look down on it, here's all the standard colors. You can see them there, black, black, blue, blue. They're in uppercase and lowercase. Like I said, you normally use it in uppercase, though. They just put it in lowercase just for the people that don't know that. Okay, but you want to keep it in uppercase for constants. So these are all the built-in colors. You can see that, oh, there's not 256. It's a whole lot less. That looks like 16. Sheesh. Okay, I'm sure there's more though. Now remember, I said color works as an object. Okay, and you can see here are the constructors for it. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 constructors for color. Like this one here, I'll show you how this one works just now. You will feed in fact, we used this before, I think, right back in LU1. We made up some colors. And so if you pass in 3 integers, that is how much red, how much green, and how much blue you want. So it'll make up a color. And that integer can be anywhere from 0 to 255. So you can make a whole range of colors there. Okay. And then here, there's all sorts of methods that you can use. You can see them there, get color and set color probably. And there's a toString. You'll see that's quite common. You won't use these too much here. What you're going to end up using is you're going to build your color with the constructor using just usually one of these colors here. Okay, so that is the documentation for color. Okay, so let's just go back to the book here. You can go through activity 2. I told you how to get to the Java API. I showed you that. You can see the address up here on the top of the screen in my browser. I showed you how to go to the Gr10 documentation. You can go through this thing called many Gr10s if you want. Okay, I'm now on page 106. I told you about method overloading. Remember, that's having multiple methods of the same name, but they differ in what they call the method signature. Okay, the method signature is this whole. Let me go back to my code. Okay, let me just stop sharing this. Let me go back to my code. So this whole thing here, where it says public static void main, that there is what they call the method signature. Okay, it's the whole string where you call a method. Okay, So the method signatures have to differ. Okay, so we've spoken about method overloading. You can do exercise 1. You won't have a problem there. Okay, I'm now on page 108. Okay, they talk about a state diagram, and you can see there the state diagram is kind of we did these we've done these trace tables before, right? So a state diagram is fairly similar, but what it is it's like a block that's telling you what the values of the properties are for an object, right? So you can see there, we've created bug. Okay, I'm now at the very top of page 109. So as soon as I say Gr10 bug equals new Gr10, the object name is bug. You can see there, and it got default values. X is 7, Y is 5, direction is up. The color is an object. Okay, you can see there, color.red. The trail width is 5, blue, and an empty string for the label. Then we execute bug.move. So we've moved the bug. So which way did it move? Well, the direction said it went upwards. If it went upwards, it means the Y became 1 less. So look at the state diagram now. The name hasn't changed. The X is still the same, but the Y is now 4. It was 5, it's now 4. So it's the Y property. That's the one that changed when we said bug move. Okay. So that is a state diagram. Are there any questions up to this point? I'm really going through this quite quickly.
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, so you'll be able to go through exercise 2. There's nothing freaky deaky in there. Okay, they give you some state diagrams. You can fill those in, and then if you move it when it moves. Okay, I'm now on page 110, and we're looking at the color class. So I showed you, and they actually give the web address there we go, of where to get the API. And then you click on color, and you can see how it opens. So I showed you what it looks like. Yeah, they've kind of got a picture in the book of what that looks like. And you can go through activity 3. Okay, so if you say system out print line, and you put in there a color.green or something like that, you can print out the colors. Okay, and they show you there how to create your own color by calling the color constructor with 3 integers. Okay, so that's section 661. They show you how to create your own color. Okay, now let's have a look. I'm on page 113. Okay, so 113, we've got some state diagrams there. Okay, so you can see what happened was we created bug 1, and it has this address. They just called it address X that points to somewhere in memory that holds the information about bug 1. So at address X, when we go and look there and we're at that pointer, you can see it's got the values 7, 9, 1, and look at color. It says color is col1. Now look underneath that. Col1 is actually another object. Remember I said to you colors are objects. So col1 points to an address which points to another block of memory that's got a red of 120, a green of 200, and a blue of 80. So the color in it is itself an object. So remember, an object can have other objects as its property. Okay, that's the beauty about this. You can have these nested objects. It's phenomenal. And likewise on bug 2, okay, when we created bug 2, it got, because it's a separate bug, it's got its own memory called ADDRY. That points to a set of properties. The color points to col2. Okay, and you can see call 2 points to another. Someone's mic is unmuted.
Amazing wife Gemma, she gave birth to our beautiful little boy. So yeah, I've had my hands pretty full. We stayed in hospital for I think 4 days. Came home 3 days ago.
Okay. Okay, so they are talking about their investigating colors. So you can go and have a look there about how the colors are working. Okay, we're in the last stretch here. Random numbers. Okay, 6.7. I don't know if we've used random numbers before. I don't think so. Okay, so there's another class. We were just working with the color class, but there's this other magnificent class that really has a bunch of stuff in it called a math class, and inside there I think we have used that. There's things like pi and square roots and logs and e to the x and sine, cos, tan, all the trig functions, all inside that math class. And one of the things inside the math class is there's a random method there that will generate a real number between 0 and 1, not including 1. So it's up to 0.9999999. Okay, so it'll generate you a random number there. So that in and of itself is not too handy. But if you say, for instance, you wanted a random number from, say, 0 to 10, all you're going to do is you're going to take the random number that gets thrown, multiply it by 10. So instead of your range now being from 0 to 1, it becomes 0 to 10, and then you cast it as an integer. That will dump all the decimal places off, and boom, you've got yourself a random number from 0 to 10. So they will show you there how to generate random numbers. Especially if you're writing games, you're going to use random numbers all over the place. Otherwise, the game becomes boring. Okay, they will show you there how to save a random number. Okay, so you're just going to define an integer. You're going to use math random, and then you're going to cast it as an integer and save it. So I'm at the bottom of page 114. And then they'll just show you how random numbers work. Nothing freaky there at all. We've done this sort of thing before. And then they're going to use, okay, I'm now on page 116. Now that you know how to throw these random numbers, they are going to say to you, okay, now use your knowledge of colors and random numbers to generate random colors. Okay, so for each integer that you're going to feed into the color, you're just going to make that a random number between 0 and 255. Okay, so that's generating random colors. Then it'll show you there at the end of your program what is in it. Okay, so you can see you had flea was the name of the bug. Okay, I'm at the top of 117 now, the state diagrams. So you can see the flea object had ADDRX, just some random piece of address in RAM. At that address in RAM was all the properties for that object, including the color, which was called new coal. New coal is itself an object. We know that it's a color. That pointed to some address Y, which had values of red, green, and blue in it, of those numbers. And you can see there was red, green, and blue with 3 separate integers. So they had their own, they were primitive data types. So that's an address in memory that's actually holding the integer value. So you can have a look at that, and that is it. Okay, so that's it for this section. A very important section. There's some you want to get, because some of these questions come up even in matric. I'm telling you now that some of the money for jam questions that come up, because a big chunk of the paper is really easy marks. They do that on purpose. It's like 40% of the paper is real easy. Okay, level 1 they call it, and those are questions like what is overloading, those sort of questions, right? So you want to get what is a constructor. You want to really get used to the terminology here in object-oriented programming. And now's the good time to start doing that. Just get into using the buzzwords, you know. So some of these you will get. These are the truly easy marks in matric. Is what's coming up here. Okay, are there any questions before I turn the recording off?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Let me turn the recording off.